Karishma, it seems like San Francisco was a long time ago. What are sort of the goals in which Antony Blinken is really looking at with this trip?
Yeah, you know, Yvonne, San Francisco does feel like a long time ago. But as part of that meeting, both Xi and Biden agreed to a package of talks, an agreement to have more dialogue. And you have seen that in the lead up to Blinken's visit that's going to be taking place this week in both Shanghai and Beijing. You've had Janet Yellen go to China. There's been a phone call between President Biden and and the Chinese leader Xi Jinping recently as well. So more dialogue is definitely good. But the key two goals, I think, that Antony Blinken will be looking to try and achieve from his visit in China is to get China on side in terms of stopping Chinese companies from funding the Russia war effort in Ukraine, and as well to try and get some way to de-escalate the growing conflict in the Middle East. China has a lot of sway in both of these areas, but it is feeling boxed in because of a variety of tactics that the U.S. has used in recent months, ranging from trade tariffs to security alliances, as well as pressure in the South China Sea. So to get China to talk and to cooperate, I do think it would serve Antony Blinken and the United States to cooperate, to be more compromising, I should say, rather than just combative all the time.
You mentioned something there, the Chinese companies funding Russia's war in Ukraine. What do we know about that, Karishma?
Very little at this point in time, and as you have consistently heard from the Chinese, they will say that this is something that is not going on. And I think there is a tone and tenor to the conversation that is really key here, because when you sit down to try and negotiate with a superpower, and for all intents and purposes, you know, these are the two rivals that will dominate the way the global economy is going to be built in the future, and also global security alliances as well. Now, what China wants very much is to have the United States out of its backyard. It wants Washington not to be involved in naval and military exercises I should say, in the South China Sea. It wants to say that this belongs to us. But other countries who are involved in this part of the world say, well, you know what, that's not true. We also lay claim to aspects of the South China Sea, and they need Washington to ensure that there is freedom of navigation in these contested waters.
We just did a story yesterday about the fact that China has actually been showing a lot of restraint, despite what we've been hearing from Janet Yellen and maybe what Antony Blinken will present this week as well. Are we likely to see that restraint hold? I mean, just given that this is a big election year and the campaign rhetoric is going to be quite, I guess, loud.
Yeah, and you've already seen that, right, Yvonne? I think one of the key concerns for Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party is what happens if indeed you do have another Trump White House. Because the last time that he was in power, foreign policy and economic policy was sort of, you know, dictated by 140 characters on Twitter. And that was very unpredictable, waking up every morning, all of us, in fact, having to find out what the latest salvo would be. Now, China has moved on since then, and there has been, as I said at the beginning of our discussion today, far more dialogue with the Biden administration, far more rational dialogue, I think it would be fair to say. But at the same time, what China has recognized is that whether it's the Democrats or Republicans in power in the White House, the tone and tenor, the approach to China is going to stay the same. The Biden administration has arguably been even tougher and more systematic when it comes to policy on China than Trump's policy. And I think the Chinese have understood that. It's also coming against the backdrop of a slowing economy in China and a great deal of disenchantment amongst the domestic population about what their future holds. Ultimately, what the Chinese Communist Party wants is survival of the regime. And it needs to ensure that the domestic population feels secure as it goes forward. And for that, it needs the international scene and landscape to be more stable than it is.